Not a Maisa, but a Vart.
I don't get to the money issues. Then we got to correct something.
You were just speaking about how we need.
Money?
You were just speaking about how we needed an energizer in Lubavitch.
Yeah.
So
we got
Purim is coming up.
The biggest and the best. Go on.
Purim is coming up.
Yeah.
And on Purim, there's a halacha brought in Shulchan Aruch. Hakodesh HaMegillah Lemafreya Lo Yatsa. Somebody who reads the Megillah backwards does not fulfill his obligation. So what does that mean? That means if you take the last verse of the Megillah, and then you read the second to last verse, then the third to last verse, all the way till you get to the first pasuk in the Megillah, that's backwards, and then you're not so you don't fulfill your obligation of reading the Megillah, or hearing the Megillah. Now the Rebbe always brings in every Purim Farbragen, probably every single year, and throughout the year, the Rebbe brought a certain example, a certain shot of the Baal Shem Tov on this halacha. The Baal Shem Tov says that Hakodesh HaMegillah Mafreya Lo Yatsa, that a person that's going to read the Megillah backwards, it's not Yetzer. So what does that mean? That means you're reading the Megillah in a way that you're thinking the story of Purim, the miracle of Purim happened 2,000 years ago. But right now, what does it have to do with right now? We need to energize. There's nothing happening right now. 2,000 years ago was good, but now... So if you read it in that way, then you're not Yetzer. That's the pshat of the Baal Shem Tov. So, in probably every single Purim Farbragen there ever brings this. We know a general rule that when you have a regular explanation of a certain thing, and then you have a certain pshat that somebody else gives, so it can't be just a pshat that the other person's going to bring whatever he wants, he can say whatever he wants. There has to be some sort of connection. So the question is, what's the connection between the pshat of the Baal Shem Tov, which we mentioned before, that if you lay the Megillah in a way that it happened only 2,000 years ago, then you're not Yetzer. Rather, you have to lay the Megillah as if the miracle of Purim is happening today. Then you're Yetzer the Megillah. What does that have to do with the regular pshat of what it means regularly? What does it mean in Shulchan Aruch? It means if you read the last verse, then the second to last, then the third to last, all the way till you get to the first verse, then you're not Yetzer. That's the regular pshat. So what's the connection? There has to be some sort of connection. So there was one time in 1976, Tav Shalom Vav, the Rebbe asked this question by the Farbragen. And the Rebbe said that there has to be some sort of connection, because two things that are expounded on one line has to be connected to each other. So the Rebbe said, not only is there a connection, but it's a very simple connection. When you read the Megillah, the story of Purim, and you're reading it as it happened 3,000 years ago, so how do you read it? You have to trace back your memory to 3,000 years ago. And when you trace back your memory, the end of the story comes before the beginning of the story. Because when you're tracing back, if you're tracing back from now to 1950, 1960 comes before 1950. Even though in the regular chronological order, 1950 is before 1960.
Right.
So when you're tracing back the story of Purim, you're thinking backwards, and that means you're going to hit the last pasuk of the Megillah, the end of the story, first. And that's the connection. When you read it in a way that it happened 2,000 years ago, you're tracing back your memory, and the first thing in your memory you're going to hit is the last pasuk of the Megillah.
You didn't make it relevant.
1 second. That's the last pasuk of the Megillah. And then you get to the second to last pasuk, third to last pasuk, until all the way you reach till Vayiv Me'achashverosh to the first pasuk. So the Rebbe says, what does Baal Shem Tov say? You have to read it in a way of now. This energizer is not 2,000 years ago, it's happening right now. You just look, be energized yourself, and right now the story of the Megillah is happening. Right now you start from Vayiv Me'achashverosh, the first pasuk of the Megillah is starting right now. Then you go to the second pasuk, and the story is happening from anew again every single year, every single day. Not that it happened 2,000 years ago and you're going to the end. You're starting from the beginning. And you start from the beginning, and when you start from the beginning, you go through, you end up in the end, and you end up in the miracle of Purim, and that's what we should all do to make it practical. We have to start from the beginning. If there's no energizer now, start from now, and at the end, when we actually start, we will get to the end. Chaim.
That is a beautiful night. You got a bank for me, because
Mendy Borton from Miami.
Which part of the Man's?
Which part? The hot part.
Oh, yeah.
Miami Beach. Miami Beach.
Miami Beach.
North or south?
Further south.
You're Yeshiva?
I'm in Yeshiva France.
No, but you're Lubavitch Yeshiva, Miami.
In Syria.
Miami Beach.
I went to visit there a few times. Very nice. Shul there.
The Tannenbaum Lubavitch World
The
Center.
shul in Bell Harbor.
Yeah.
Surfside, whatever.
The shul.
The
People
shul.
from Toronto
Yeah,
built
the
that.
shul. I still get their emails.
Tannenbaum.
Tenenbaum?
That's
A long time ago?
Yeah.
Ooh, the Tall family?
Are they tall?
Which Tenenbaum? Maybe there's another Tenenbaum.
That
No.
was,
Joseph and
Eric
Faye. The shul is named after them.
Yeah.
Probably half of the Jewish organizations in the city have something named
All around
after
the
them.
world, you do Yerushalayim everywhere.
Yeah.
Or Sameach. There's a lot of my Or Sameach too. But they don't have only the Tannenbaum World Lubavitch Center. Yeah, Baruch Hashem. Anyway, it's good to have you here. Thank you for saving our Farbragen.
What's your name?
David Levine.
In Toronto.
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 Used to be
Oh.
when I was born. It was Toronto was with an olive. They used to spell it the kashrus. What they I forget what they used to call it in those
They still
days.
do
But anyway, Toronto was an olive at the end.
We
And
still
they
do.
changed it to
Lubavitchers do. No,
No,
change
I'm
itself
saying
off.
if you look, yeah, but if you look in
Suba
the
is made by Lubavitchers. They
if
spell
you
it with an
look
olive
at
at the end.
COR, you look at the tuna, it's with the vav today.
But the Lubavitchers spell it with an olive for some reason. Like
You need to
Suba.
bring the olive.
Because of Rabbi Aronos probably.
I don't know why,
Change
but
the Gola to
you look at
Gula.
any.
Well, that's when they came here. That's
Actually,
what it was.
who- you
maybe you can't change the spelling.
Maybe that's the problem.
You checked on your
Oh,
Ksuba, what it
Change
says.
the olive.
That's what it is.
That's why everything's
Well, Aleph is the noise, right?
Aleph
Start
is-
with
Aleph is a
right.
lead show.
So,
Aleph is Geula.
Yeah.
Goila is Golus. And you add the Aleph is Geula.
Bring
Maybe.
the olive into the world.
Definitely
Bring
change.
the top 10.
maybe. It's simple. That's what the Torah starts with a base. But Aleph is a noichi, right? Rebbe brings Aleph is a noichi. And noichi is the funny, man.
And I'm not sure
Anyway, there's one mice I gotta tell you. Some of the people heard it before, but it's such a gewaldig mice about the listed from Eretz Yisrael, and he comes to the Rebbe, and he has a very difficult job in Eretz Yisrael. If somebody is killed in Saul in the army, that he has to go to the families to break the news. But he says, Rebbe says last year, 30 mentioned Gehargit, 30 people killed. He says, we really need a bracha in Eretz Yisrael. Rebbe says 33. He doesn't argue with the Rebbe. Comes back to Eretz Yisrael. He says, sometime later, gets a memo from here, from there, from Shin Bet, from Mossad, whatever. Comes back to the Rebbe next time he's in New York. He says, Rebbe, how could you possibly know? He says, it's 33 about these people, these places. It's classified information. So the Rebbe says that every neshama that comes in and out of this world comes through this room. You hear this, Maisen? But I hold it. So what does it show us? That that the Rebbe handpicked us. And if we believe the Rebbe is the ticket to the Gula, that something that we're his partners in achieving that. So that brings on a chiyuv. That we have to dig deep to give everything that we got, to complete this task. And if we question, do we have the ability to do it? you know that the Rebbe picked you, number one. You know Eved HaMelech Melech. And you know, if Eved HaMelech Melech of anybody, of any king, what could really match? You know, to be an Eved HaMelech Melech of the Eibishter and the Rebbe. And you know that I just want to make a l'chaim that we should realize our potential. All right, the Makar Mamish and finish the job. Simcha. Simcha Rabba.
You want to hear a story that I heard yesterday at the Rebbe?
Now we're talking.
The story is as follows. Somebody came to the Rebbe for the Chiddush, and he gave in his settle to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe started reading the paper. The Rebbe reads, he asked for a bracha for a shidduch. He wants to get married. So the Rebbe turns to him, and the Rebbe says, you forgot your name. You forgot to write your name. So the Rebbe tells him, take the paper, go outside, find a pen, write your name, and come back in. So he takes the paper, and he goes outside. The next guy about to go inside the room has a pen. So he takes his pen, he writes his name, and he goes back into the room, and he gives the paper to the Rebbe. Then the Chiddush is over, and the next person walks in. And the Rebbe takes his settle, and it says over there that he has a daughter that he's looking for a shidduch, that she's looking for a shidduch. And he tells the Rebbe, I just saw a person ask me for a pen. He looks like a good guy. Maybe you could work something out, my daughter and him. So the Rebbe says, well, you think I don't have any pens in my desk?
Probably told me the Rebbe wouldn't quite say it that way.
It's
You would
sharp.
be surprised.
That's a Yiddish sense of humor.
The Chalal Friedrich Rebbe was known for more of his sharp short phrases, but not too surprising for the Rebbe to say such a thing.
Any stories about Adar, Marvin McQueen?
We only have one more left.
One more udder?
One more Adar left.
One more udder and
Well,
we'll...
the famous Tafshin and Bays sefer about, actually, it speaks about the idea of, sorry, let's go back. It was actually Chaf Zion. Where it speaks about Moshe Momes, and it says by Paro drew out a lot, and the lot was showing that this was Haman drew out a lot, and he saw that this month was the month perfect for the Jews to be wiped out because it was the death of Moshe Rabbeinu. And the Gemara says that little did he know it was also the birth of Moshe Rabbeinu. And Rashi says that the birth atones for the death. The Rebbe has a couple questions. The point is that we have to understand, first of all, how is it that the birth atones for death? At first glance, when we have someone who is righteous, we don't know how righteous he was until after the day he passed away. All his actions throughout his life show how righteous the person was, not by the beginning of his actions. The Rebbe also explains that what was Haman thinking, that he was saying that it was that it was the death of Moshe Rabbeinu, when we know by tzaddikim b'chlal that when a tzaddik passes away, he's found more in the world than he was when he was alive. So, again, what was it that Paro was so happy about? That he saw that the death of Haman was so happy about that he saw that
Okay, the Muslims did the same thing.
that it was the death of Moshe Rabbeinu. So first of all, I have to explain Moshe Rabbeinu. What's his whole Mitzias? His Torah. It says that when Moshe Rabbeinu was born, that the whole house filled with light. So the idea is that since the beginning of the house was filled with light, so to the end, just the idea of emes, that it doesn't change from the beginning to the middle of the end, it doesn't change. As opposed to sheker, even the letters itself, the Aleph has 2 legs.
Aleph.
Mem has a bottom, which shows on it being situated, and the Tuf has 2 legs. As opposed to Sheker, where the Shin is tilted to the side, the Kuf is standing on 1 leg, and the Resh only has 1 leg. So it brings that to show that it's not completely on balance. They're off balance, and therefore it's not going to last. So Moshe Rabbeinu is the whole midah of emes, and so too by the Yidden, because it says in the Yidden are called Ko, and Moshe is also called the Ko, which shows him all the Yidden. So when we do something that Moshe Rabbeinu demands from us, and we do what Moshe wants, then we make it that now it'll become the reality, and that's emes. Therefore, so why was it that Haman wasn't able to wipe out the Yidden? Is because Haman was looking on the level of Mazel, whereas the Yidden were reaching the level of Yechida. And that's the Moshe Rabbeinu inside of us, the spark of Moshe Rabbeinu inside of us, that's the level of Yechida. It brings out, which it speaks about in Atzit Tzavet, that Moshe is the one who's the faithful shepherd that nurtures our Emunah. And therefore, since Haman wanted to throw out a lot and wipe out the Jewish people, it was on the level of mazel, and like Tanya says that every blade of grass has its mazel, except the Yidden can control their mazel. They're higher than mazel, and that's why with Moshe Rabbeinu's help, the Yidden were able to break free, and because Moshe Rabbeinu at that time was Mordechai gathered the Yidden, which brought out the level of Mesiras Nefesh, and broke through the decree of Haman. So see that Moshe Rabbeinu inside every generation has the ability to nurture the Yidden and to bring us closer to our Munah, and Mashiach should come speedily.
Amen.
Amen.